بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة دلالة وكل دلالة في النار. Okay, in the last lesson that we had on this treatise of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab, Tafsir Kalimat al-Tawheed, an explanation of the word of Tawheed, then the Shaykh al-Islam explained how the intent behind this kalima, La ilaha illallah, is not just to say it, just to utter it without having any knowledge of its meaning. And if that was the case, then the hypocrites, we find that the hypocrites actually repeat this kalima. They make this kalima, they testify that Muhammad is the messenger. However, the hypocrites are in the lowest depths of the hellfire, as Allah has mentioned in the Quran in Surah An-Nisa. And this is also despite the fact that these hypocrites who make mention of this kalima, that they also pray, that they also fast, and that they even went out on expeditions along with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this proves that the intent is not just to utter the kalima. There's no virtue in just uttering the kalima in and of itself without having any knowledge of its meaning. And the Shaykh explained how what is intended by it is to say it whilst having knowledge of its meaning in the heart, and loving this kalima on account of its meaning, and loving the people who likewise express this kalima, and hating those who oppose it and having enmity towards them. So the Shaykh, this was the general point that we covered in the last lesson, and we'll continue then today with the words of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab to further emphasize the same point that we covered last week. So Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab continues after establishing that the intent is not just to say it whilst being ignorant of its meaning, rather a person must know it in his heart, and believe in it in his heart, and understand its meaning and act upon its requirements, and so on and so forth. And then the Shaykh, now here he brings some texts from the Sunnah, Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Ibn Abdul Wahaab, and he says, كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من قال لا إله إلا الله مخلصا من قلب مخلصا. And then in another narration, khalisan. So in one hadith it mentions mukhlisan, in another narration it mentions khalisan min qalbihi. And in yet another narration of the same hadith mentions sadiqan min qalbihi. So in one narration mukhlisan, in another narration khalisan, and in another narration sadiqan min qalbihi, which translates to whoever says La ilaha illallah out of purely or sincerely from his heart, either sincerely from his heart, out of sincereness of his heart, or out of the truthfulness of his heart. This kind of general meaning. Mukhlisan, khalisan, sadiqan, sincerely and purely and truthfully out of his heart. And in another hadith, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man qala la ilaha illallah wa kafara bima yu'badu min dunillah." Whoever says la ilaha illallah and disbelieves in whatever is worshipped besides Allah. And then Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Ibn Abdul Wahaab says, and there are other such ahadith, all of which indicate the ignorance of most of the people regarding this kalima. That these texts that we've just looked at, and other such texts, all of which show the ignorance of most people regarding this testimony, this testification. And then the Shaykh Salih Al Fawzaan, he comments upon this passage, and he says that in this hadith, man qala la ilaha illallah mukhlisan, whoever says la ilaha illallah sincerely and purely, out of pure sincerity, the Shaykh says this here is a condition or a restriction, right? Meaning this sentence here contains a restriction, because the Messenger didn't just say man qala la ilaha illallah, whoever says la ilaha illallah, and leave it open. Rather, he mentioned mukhlisan min qalbihi, and this is a condition or a restriction of the general meaning. So therefore this means it's not sufficient that a person just merely utter la ilaha illallah, unless and until that is out of the sincerity of his heart. And therefore he is not from the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, those who just say it with their tongues but they don't really say it with their hearts, right? So they say it on their tongues but their hearts don't really speak with it, meaning the hearts don't really believe in it. And similarly in the other hadith that was mentioned, the Shaykh continues and says وَمَنْ قَالَ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَكَفَرَ بِمَا عُبِدَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, whoever says La ilaha illallah and disbelieves in whatever was worshipped besides Allah, this again is, the Shaykh says, a great and mighty restriction. This is another great restriction that has been placed upon the general meaning. وَكَفَرَ بِمَا عُبِدَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, and disbelieves in whatever is worshipped besides Allah. This is because, as the Shaykh explains, many people, they say La ilaha illallah. So you find many people who will utter this kalima and utter this testimonial, but at the same time they will not abandon the worshipping of the graves, or calling upon the dead, supplicating to the dead, and seeking rescue by way of them, and seeking their needs from other than Allah. All of these people, then the kalima la ilaha illallah will not benefit them, because they haven't disbelieved in whatever is worshipped other than Allah. So even though they express and they say la ilaha illallah with their tongues, they have not at the same time disbelieved in what is worshipped besides Allah. And most of the people, they are ignorant of this testification, and they think that it's just a word that is said by the tongue. And even many of the so-called scholars, they don't understand the meaning of la ilaha illallah. These are scholars who might be, they might be scholars in the issues of fiqh, they might be scholars in the issue of grammar, Arabic grammar, they might be scholars in the subject of hadith, particular details of the hadith. But most of these people, you find that they don't have any great concern with Tawheed itself. Or such people, they might have learnt the Aqidah of the Ash'aris, and the scholars and the people of philosophy, the philosophers. And to these people, to this group of people, Tawheed is restricted to Ar-Rububiyyah. To them, when you say La ilaha illallah, that's sufficient. And they say, and they explain it to mean La khaliqa illallah, there is no creator except Allah, and there is no one capable of al-ikhtira', meaning there's no one capable of, again, creating or bringing something new into existence except for Allah. And this is the tafsir that is given by the Ash'aris and other than them from the scholars of the philosophers. This is a tafsir that is given to this kalima, and they don't go beyond Tawheed ar-Rububiyyah, and they never ever explain this kalima with anything that goes beyond Tawheed ar-Rububiyyah. Everything they describe it with, it never goes beyond or doesn't go outside of the limits of Tawheed ar-Rububiyyah. And you find that these people, they never address the issue of uluhiyyah Allah's sole right to be worshipped alone, which is actually what is intended. This is what is the intent behind La ilaha illallah. This is what is actually the intent. And then if you read, the Shaykh says, if you read the Aqidah or the Aqaid, the books of Aqid, the statements of Aqidah of the Mutakallimin, the people of philosophy and theological rhetoric and Ilm al-Kalam and so on and so forth, you find that most of them, that when the issue of Aqidah to them revolves around the affirmation of the existence of Allah. So when you look into the books of these philosophers and those who became affected by them or who share similarities with them, like the Ash'a'ira, and you look into what they write on the topic of Aqidah, you find that it will revolve around proving and establishing Allah's existence, as if there is any doubt concerning Allah's existence, as if there is doubt to begin with regarding Allah's existence, such that it needs to be addressed in this manner, and as if there is any doubt regarding admitting that Allah is the creator and the provider and the one who gives life and the one who takes life, and so on and so forth. This is how it is with these people. And they don't mention ibadah, they don't really mention uluhiyya. When they discuss these subjects in the issues of aqidah, they never really deal with these subjects. So in reality, the Shaykh says this doesn't really go beyond the deen of the mushrikeen, the deen of the pagans. It doesn't really go beyond what the mushriks are upon with respect to their deen. As Allah says about them, and then the Shaykh brings some ayat from the Quran. Allah says regarding these mushrikeen, قُلْ مَنْ يَرْزُقُكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَمَّنْ يَمْلِكُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَمَنْ يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتَ مِنَ الْحَيِّ وَمَنْ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ فَسَيَقُولُونَ اللَّهُ. Say, who is the one who provides you from the heaven and the earth, and is the one who controls the hearing and the seeing, and the one who brings the living from the dead and brings out the dead from the living, and the one who controls and regulates the affairs? Who is the one? They will surely say Allah. They will surely say Allah. This is the response of the mushrikeen to this question. So this establishes that the mushrikeen, they affirm that Allah is the sustainer, He controls hearing and seeing, He bestows hearing and seeing, He controls it, He takes out the living from the dead from the living, and He's the one who controls the whole affair, the whole, everything. And they affirm this. It's Surah Yunus, Surah number 10, verse 31. And they affirm the Rabb. So they affirm the Rabb. This ayah proves that they affirm the Rabb and they affirm Rububiyyah for Allah, but they worship other than Allah. As Allah says in the same surah, earlier on in the same surah, Allah says about the same people, وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ وَيَقُولُونَ هَؤُلَاءِ شُفَعَاؤُنَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. That they worship besides Allah that which does not harm them nor benefit them, and then they say, these are our intercessors with Allah. Surah Yunus, verse 18. So these people don't say these things that we worship, they are creators, they create and they sustain and provide. They don't say that. Rather, they affirm that for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They affirm Rububiyyah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they don't affirm anything that enters into Rububiyyah for other than Allah from those things that they worship. But what they do say is that these things are our interceders, shufa'a, and they are our wasata, they are our intermediaries between us and between Allah. This is the issue. So this shows that the whole affair of this meaning of the kalima is a very grave and very serious affair, and you find that there's a great deal of confusion regarding this issue. Many people have gone astray by way of this confusion. And the person who goes and he explains Tawheed, he makes Tawheed clear, he explains it, he explains the meaning of La ilaha illallah, then these people will say about such a person, this person, he makes takfir of the Muslimin, he declares the Muslimin to be kuffar. This is how the situation has become turned the other way around. So the Shaykh says, we free ourselves from anyone who makes takfir of the Muslimin. We free ourselves from anyone who declares the Muslims to be disbelievers. And we don't disbelieve, we don't make takfir of anyone. We don't make takfir of anyone except the one whom Allah and the Messenger have declared to be a disbeliever. So anyone whom Allah and His Messenger declared to be a disbeliever, then we declare him to be a disbeliever. And the person, and so therefore in light of this, the person who we find who doesn't actualize the meaning of La ilaha illallah, meaning he doesn't act upon it in the manner that we've been discussing in this treatise, the one who doesn't actualize its meaning, the one who doesn't believe in its meaning, act upon its meaning outwardly, and all the other things that follow on from that, like loving and hating and so on and so forth, the one who doesn't actualize it in the manner that's been requested, then such a person has been declared a disbeliever by Allah and His Messenger. Such a person has been declared a disbeliever by Allah and His Messenger. Okay, then Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab rahimahullah, he then says, then he goes on to explain. He says, فَأْلَمْ أَنَّ هَذِهِ الْكَلِمَةِ نَفِي وَإِثْبَاتِ. فَأْلَمْ أَنَّ هَذِهِ الْكَلِمَةِ نَفِي وَإِثْبَاتِ. Know that this kalima is negation and affirmation. Know that this kalima is negation and affirmation. And then the Shaykh Salih al-Fawzaan, he comments upon this and he says that this kalima has two pillars. There are two pillars. And these pillars, the pillars of the kalima, are nafi and ithbat, negation and affirmation. If you remember at the beginning of this treatise, the Shaykh, he mentioned how this kalima, it has a meaning, it has a muqtada, a ma'na and a muqtada, it has requirements, and it has pillars, and it has shurut. It has shurut. Right? So we've already covered, if you remember last time, the shurut conditions were the 7 conditions of La ilaha illallah, or the 8 conditions. If we add disbelief in at-taghut as being one of the conditions, yeah? So we've got the conditions. Here the Shaykh has explained, and the meaning, we know the meaning. And here the Shaykh has mentioned the pillars. There are 2 pillars of the kalima, and they are nafi and ithbat, affirmation and negation. So the Shaykh says, so therefore negation is not enough on its own. It's not sufficient for a person just say La ilaha. He negates that there is, that in itself isn't sufficient. And nor is it sufficient just to make the affirmation, the part where we affirm that worship is only for Allah. Illallah. Right, so in isolation, it's not enough. To have one without the other is not sufficient. Rather, both of them must be present and tied together. As Allah says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ وَيُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ. So whoever disbelieves in at-taghut and believes in Allah. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, verse 256. Allah here said, يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. Allah here, and then He followed it with وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ. So we find Allah didn't say in this verse فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ and just stop there, whoever just believes in at-taghut. And nor did Allah say وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, whoever just believes, يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, whoever believes in Allah. No, rather we find that Allah mentioned both things together. So this shows that both things are required. And then Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab says, negation of ilahiyya, from whatever is besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. right? So that we negate this right of worship from whatever is besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the messengers until even Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Right? So we negate ilahiyya from all of the messengers, and from the angels until even Jibreel, until all of the angels, from all of the angels until even Jibreel, let alone those who are besides them from the prophets and the righteous. Right? So we negate this ilahiyya from everyone in the creation, even the messengers and the most superior of them, even the angels and the most superior of them, and likewise all of those who are lesser than them from the prophets and the righteous. So we negate it from whatever is besides Allah, and then وَإِثْبَاتُهَا لِلَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ, we affirm it only for Allah, the Mighty and Majestic. And then the Shaykh comments, the Shaykh says, the Shaykh Salih al-Fawzaan comments upon this passage, and he says that to negate the ilahiyya from everything that is worship besides Allah, from the created things, even if this thing or this person or whatever it is, even if it might be the most pious and the most the most pious of the righteous people and the most upright of mankind is Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Right? So we negate it even if it's the most upright and the most pious person. And likewise, even if it is the most upright or the most noble of the angels, which is Jibreel alayhi salam. So this means that if anyone was to worship Jibreel or to worship Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, then this person would no doubt be a mushrik who would remain eternally in the hellfire. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not pleased that anyone should be ascribed to Him as a partner, should be given a share in worship, neither from the angels, nor from the prophets, nor from the righteous, nor from the trees, nor from the stones, and nothing. As Allah says, the Shaykh then brings the verse, وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا, and do not associate anyone in the worship. He does not associate anyone in the worship of his Lord, anyone. Surah Al-Kahf, Surah 18, verse 110. This is regarding the person, who hopes to meet his Lord, who hopes to meeting the standing with his Lord. Then let him work righteous actions and not associate anyone in the worship of his Lord. And this is just a general statement, that a person who wishes to meet his Lord, then let him not associate anyone in worship with his Lord. And then in another verse Allah says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. This is Surah An-Nisa, Surah number 4, verse 36. Here Allah says, and worship Allah and do not associate anything with Him. So here now this is very specific. Very specific. Shay'an, Allah said, وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا, meaning anything. Don't associate anything at all with Him. Anything. And this negation here, the way that Allah has negated here in this place, the Shaykh mentions like a grammatical point, that this is a general negation, nafi am. And also the way that's been mentioned is that the way that it's been mentioned is that in the indefinite sense. It's in the indefinite sense. So the Shaykh says that there's a principle in grammar, that whenever something is negated, and it's negated while it is indefinite, meaning it doesn't have the definite article, the alif lam prefix to it, then this means that this negation is a general negation that covers everything. It covers everything. So therefore when Allah says وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا, worship Allah and do not associate with Him anything, This is a general negation that covers everything. So nothing is left out from that. And this would include the messengers, the prophets, the angels, the righteous, the stones, the trees, the jinn, everything. It negates everything. And then the Shaykh says, Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab, he then says that when you have understood that, then reflect upon the uluhiyyah. Reflect upon this uluhiyyah which Allah has affirmed for Himself. Just reflect upon it. That Allah has affirmed for Himself, and which He has negated from Muhammad ﷺ and from Jibreel and from other than them. Then reflect upon how can it be that they can even have an atom's or a seed's weight of this uluhiyyah. How can this be the case? That when Allah has negated it from Muhammad ﷺ and Jibreel and other than them, then obviously we know that Allah has negated that they even have an atom's weight. Allah has negated that of this uluhiyyah. And then the Shaykh comments upon this passage and he says, uluhiyyah here, the meaning of it is ibadah, worship. And the Shaykh then says, so we find that many people have erred in the tafsir of La ilaha illallah. Many people, many different categories of people have erred in the explanation that they've given to La ilaha illallah. And then the Shaykh, he goes on to explain the different ways in which people have erred in explaining this kalima. And he mentions four groups in particular who've gone astray. Inshallah, we'll cover them one by one. So the Shaykh says, first of all, the first group of people are the people of wahdatul wujud. Wahdatul wujud, and this is their explanation of La ilaha illallah. People of wahdatul wujud are those who believe in the unity of existence, namely that the whole of the creation is just one single thing. Along with Allah, it's just one whole thing, inseparable. So the Shaykh says that the people of wahdatul wujud, the likes of Ibn Arabi and his followers, they say La ilaha illallah that this means La ma'bud illallah, La ma'bud illallah, that there is no deity except Allah. There is no deity except Allah. Or they say La ilahun mawjud illallah, there is no ilah which exists except Allah. Now if you reflect upon the way that they've explained this La ilaha illallah, this would basically mean that every single thing which is worshipped is itself Allah. Right? So everything which is worshipped by anyone or anything, then that thing which is worshipped is Allah. This is the meaning of their explanation. La ma'budun illallah, there is nothing which is worshipped except Allah. This means that everything which is worshipped therefore is Allah. And la ilah, there is no ilah that exists except Allah. So again, this would mean that every ilah that is worshipped besides Allah, that itself is Allah, because of the fact that it's worshipped, according to this explanation. And then the Shaykh says, this is because to these people, the existence, when we look at existence, it's not divided between a creator and the created. They make no distinction. Rather, everything is Allah. This is the meaning. That the people of wahdatul wujud, that they make the existence to be like a single thing that cannot be divided, and all of it is Allah. And it doesn't matter what thing a person worships, it doesn't matter what thing a person worships, then it doesn't matter what he worships, he has still worshipped Allah. Meaning, the person who worships the grave, person who worships the idol, person who worships the stone, a person who worships any person from mankind, person who worships the angels. It doesn't matter. This person is still worshipping Allah, because the whole of existence is a single existence, and it is Allah, and it can't be separated. It doesn't matter what you worship, then you are still worshipping Allah. And all of these people, to them, are worshipping Allah because they say Allah is the only absolute existence. The only existence is that of Allah's, and we are just part of that existence. And then these people, what they say, these people, when someone comes and says, verily the creation does indeed divide into two, divides into a creator who is not created and the creation, they say about such a person, this person is a mushrik. This person is the mushrik, because this person is not a muwahhid. This person hasn't believed in the unity of existence. The whole of existence is a single thing. To them, that is Tawheed. Tawheed is to affirm that Allah is just one indivisible entity, one indivisible whole, and that the whole of creation, everything in the creation, in fact, existence is Allah Himself, and Allah Himself is existence. There is nothing outside of His existence. So these people, to someone who comes and says that there is a creator and the created, to these people this person is a mushrik, because now he no longer believes in the unity of Allah's existence. Because again, to these people, they say that it doesn't matter what you worship in this creation, whether it be trees or stones or idols or any of the false gods, then you are still worshipping Allah, because all of those affairs are they are indivisible with Allah, and they are Allah's existence in and of themselves. And this is how it is with these people. And then the Shaykh makes a point. He says it's also worthy to point out here that there is there is a mistake that occurs from many of the common people who say, for example, sometimes they say La ma'budun siwaka, La ma'budun siwaka, that there is none which is worshipped except you. And the Shaykh says this is incorrect, because we know that there are other things which are worshipped besides Allah. To say La ma'bud siwaka, that there is nothing which is worshipped beside you, this is incorrect. That again would be the same meaning as the meaning of the people of Wahdatul Wujud. Rather, it is better, what is correct is La ma'budun bihaqqin siwak, that there is none which is worshipped in truth besides you. And if he doesn't say this, if he just says La ma'budu siwak, that there is none which is worshipped besides you, then this really would be in agreement with the saying of the people of Wahdatul Wujud. But if he added this one word, La ma'budun bihaqqin, there is none which has a right to be worshipped in truth besides you, bihaqqin, then this meaning would become correct, this kalima would become correct. Because we know that everything which is worshipped besides Allah is worshipped. There are many things which are worshipped besides Allah, but they are worshipped in falsehood. They are worshipped upon batil. So just to say there is none which is worshipped besides you, that's not correct, because there are many things which are worshipped besides Allah. The point is, which is the true and correct worship, and which is the false and baseless worship. So this is why we say La ma'budun bihaqqin siwak. There is none which is worshipped in truth except you, meaning only you are worshipped in truth. And everything which is worshipped besides Allah is batil, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْحَقُّ وَأَنَّ مَا يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِهِ هُوَ الْبَاطِلُ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْكَبِيرُ. which means that this is because Allah, He is the truth, and whatever they call upon or supplicate to besides Him, that is batil, it is batil. And really Allah, He is Al-Ali, the most high, Al-Kabir, the great, the most mighty, the great. Surah Al-Hajj, surah number 22, verse number 26. And then we'll finish with the next group. The next group is the tafsir which is given by the people of philosophy, the people of ilm al-kalam, the people of theological rhetoric. And these people, they say La ilaha illallah. This means that there is none which has the power to create and to bring something new and to control and to manage or to bring something into existence except Allah. Right? This is the meaning of the kalima to them. There is no one who has the qudra or the ability or the power over creating and controlling and bringing into existence and devising or bringing something new except Allah. This is the meaning that they with which they explain La ilaha illallah with. And this is incorrect. This in fact agrees with the deen of the mushrikeen, because the pagans, they say no one has any power over creation except Allah. No one gives life except Allah. No one takes life except Allah. No one provides and sustains except Allah. And this is nothing other than Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. So to explain this kalima by al-Rububiyyah is the way of the people of Ilm al-Kalam, from the Asha'ira and the philosophers and other than them. And this is an error. This is also a mistake, because as the Shaykh explained earlier, it doesn't go outside of the bounds of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, which is something that is affirmed by the whole of mankind anyway, which is affirmed by the mushrikeen anyway. So inshallah we'll stop there and we'll continue with the remaining two groups that the Shaykh covers inshallah ta'ala in the next lesson. No, okay. No problem. لا بس. Okay inshallah. Islam. Yeah.